Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Robert Allen, and joining us today from the Royal Military College Duntroon is Senior Under Officer Travis Butler. This evening's last post ceremony marks the 73rd anniversary of the commencement of the Korean War. The Korean War began on the 25th of June 1950, when the North Korean People's Army launched a large-scale offensive across the 38th parallel into South Korea. Over the next 3 years, the war would rage the length and breadth of the Korean peninsula and would cost over 2 million lives. 21 member nations of the United Nations, including Australia, sent combat or medical units to assist South Korea to maintain its sovereignty. Around 17,000 Australians served in Korea between 1950 and 1953, of which 340 were killed, over 1,500 wounded, and 30 were taken prisoner. A further 16 lost their lives during armistice enforcement operations. Their names are recorded here on the Roll of Honour. This evening, we warmly welcome the family of Private William Roy McMillan, who lost his life during the Korean War. His story will be told shortly. We warmly welcome the graduating class of the Royal Military College Duntroon. As always, we welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by family and visitors to the memorial. Australia's Federation Guard is the tri-service ceremonial unit of the Australian Defence Force. They provide a ceremonial presence at civil and military events and during visits to Australia by foreign dignitaries. The Guard will now dismount the catapult party from the tomb of the unknown Australian soldier. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem.
Catapult party, attention! Catapult party, present!
Australians, oh let us rejoice, for we are one and free. We've golden soil and wealth for toil, our home is God by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty, rich and rare. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains, then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
Catapult party, shoulder, Catapult party, order,
Those requiring a seat, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Private William Roy McMillan. Roy McMillan and his identical twin brother Kenneth were born on the 26th of December 1928 in Wimbledon, England, to Australian-born sports journalist William Kenneth McMillan and his wife Elizabeth. Young Roy grew up in Southborough and attended Skinner School for Boys at Royal Townbridge Swells. He was a member of the school cadet unit for 3 years and was a drummer in the unit's band. He also achieved his War Certificate Alpha for his service. McMillan and his brother were also keen sportsmen, representing the school's team for rugby. Roy McMillan left school after attaining his sub-intimate certificate and went to study agriculture. He worked on a farm at West Ham in Kent before finding employment with the British Overseas Food Corporation and then going on to work on the ground nut scheme in East Africa. The scheme was a disaster, and by 1950, McMillan had returned to Southborough, where he was working as a tractor driver. Around this time, McMillan and several of his friends applied for the Assisted Migration Scheme to Australia. He was sponsored by the British Overseas Food Corporation and sailed from London aboard the P&O liner Citadel on the 28th of March, 1950. After arriving in Melbourne, McMillan made his way to Queensland, where he worked on several farms as a tractor driver and leading hand. By 1952, he had made his way to Darwin, where he worked as a tractor driver for the North Territories Department of Civil Aviation. The Korean War had been raging for nearly 2 years. The Australian government had committed 3rd Battalion and the Royal Australian Regiment, and was in the process of setting a 2nd Battalion. However, the Army was amidst a critical manpower shortage. The government responded by creating a special volunteer force known as K-Force to boost numbers. Volunteers were required to sign up for a 3-year term, with one of these years being sent to Korea. McMillan enlisted for service with K-Force at Larrakia Barracks in Darwin on the 6th of February 1952. Several months of intense training followed before he qualified as an infantry soldier. On the 16th of September, he flew out to Sydney, bound for Japan. He was initially sent to one reinforcement holding unit before flying to Korea at the end of November. He joined the 3rd Battalion, the Royal Australian Regiment, the next day and was assigned to 2 Platoon, Alpha Company. Winter in Korea was particularly harsh, and the winter of 1952 and 1953 was no different. The war by this stage involved nighttime patrols and raids, and casualties were consistent. Movement during the day was kept to a minimum at the front line, was under constant enemy observation. Any movement usually drew artillery or sniper fire. On the 24th of January, 1953, McMillan was evacuated to the British Commonwealth Zone Hospital in Seoul, suffering a medical complaint. McMillan responded well to treatment, was back with his unit on the 6th of February. By this time, the 1st Commonwealth Division had been withdrawn from the front line for a rest and remained in reserve until the start of April. When the Australians returned to the front line, they were soon back out on nightly patrols, and McMillan was involved in patrols and work parties, working to improve 3RAR's defensive positions. After a period in reserve, 3RAR returned to the front line on the 16th of June, welcomed by Chinese propaganda broadcasts, which provided some amusement for the recipients. On the 22nd of June, McMillan was a member of an ambush patrol led by Lieutenant Peter Goss, which was sent to a heavily contested feature known as the Mound. The patrol made it to the position and, finding no Chinese soldiers present, took up ambush positions. A fighting patrol from Bravo Company was also sent out that night, and due to the platoon commander's failure to adhere to the patrol route, strayed 600 metres to the west and moved onto the Mound. Mistaking Bravo Company for Chinese, Goss's patrol opened fire. The firefight lasted 20 seconds, but the human devastation was extreme. The Bravo Company patrol had suffered 7 casualties. including 2 killed. In Alpha Company patrol, one man, McMillan, had been killed instantly by multiple gunshot wounds to the head. McMillan's remains and those of the 2 other men were taken to the United Nations Cemetery, where they laid rest with full military honours. McMillan was 24 years old. McMillan's name is listed here on the Roll of Honour on my left, among the 340 soldiers, sailors, and airmen who died as a result of their service during the Korean War. In 2006, his name was added to the Southborough War Memorial in Tunbridge Wells, his former hometown. His photography is displayed today by the Pool of Affection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Peter William Roy McMillan, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
Shoulder.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support during the Memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.